What is up, everybody? It feels like, once again, it's been a hot minute since we've taken the air here. I guess it was last Friday. I don't know. For some reason, last week,
less than a week.
Yeah, I know. It's gone by. It feels slow, fast. I don't know. It's hard to keep track of. But I'm Anthony Cosenza. He's John Sharon. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Happy to be coming at you Thursday night, talking some Bengals football. Yeah, it might be a little slow on the NFL calendar, but we're still yakking at you. We're still breaking things down, talking about the team we all know and love, the Cincinnati Bengals, all part of the Cincy Jungle podcast network. And John, welcome back. How are you, dude?
I'm doing good, dude. I'm currently being powered by rarefied energy because right before the show, I reached out to someone that I used to date, and it's one of those like risky texts when you just kind of like throw your phone away like right afterwards, but like it's a lot of anticipation. For those who know, they know. So like I'm on a rarefied energy. Let's just call it that right now.
Okay, so we're feeling pretty good about the possible outcome there. We got a response, but come on, you can't tease us like this, dude. Come on.
There's been no response yet. Like I purposely timed it so like I'm not looking at my phone for the next hour. You know what I mean?
Okay, so it's like brush it aside.
We're very much just in the middle of space right now. We have no direction. We have no sense of anything right now. So
okay. Well, hey, I'm hoping for the outcome.
It's going to be a great show. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping for the outcome that you desire on that front, my friend. Sending good vibes over to you. If you are new here, welcome. And you can watch or get this show on a number of different platforms, including YouTube, by clicking the show icon above John Sharon. You can click that. Click the subscribe button. Click the bell to be notified when we go live, to get notified when we go live, when new content is available. And of course, if you like what we do on the video side of things, give us a thumbs up. That helps us out. But subscribe there if you would like. You can also give a thumbs up on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. You can do that there and catch the streams that we do live there, videos after the fact. You can get it on your favorite audio streamer, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the major ones. We are there. So subscribe along with our show, 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin, talking football with Bengal Jim and friends, and, of course, all the great content from the coach, Matt Minnick, all on your Cincy Jungle podcast channel. We appreciate all the support that you've shown us throughout the many years we've done this show, and all of the support that you've shown the website, Cincy Jungle, and, of course, hopefully John's feeling the love over at A to Z Sports as well. Give him some reads, some clicks, some likes. Go check out all the great stuff he's doing over there, as well as on our show as the talent. I'm just the yacker. He's the talent here. So that being said, let's get down to business, John. And I am reluctant to even talk about this again. I feel like we talk about this every week. I feel like there's a new chapter, a new slight, a new headline, whatever. But yet again, there's some chatter between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, we know now that this is kind of becoming a big rivalry. I think the NFL just absolutely loves it, is eating it up because of the talent of the two quarterbacks, the talent of the teams, kind of the older, grizzled, experienced, successful coach, the young up-and-comer, that sort of thing, all the storylines you can associate with it, and, of course, the mega stars on both rosters. We've had Joe Burrow kind of actually pay Pat Mahomes the ultimate compliment, saying he's the best quarterback in the league. And then you had Jamar just kind of followed up with a jokingly Pat who. Patrick Mahomes fires back with a picture of Pat Who, and he's got the rings on. And now you got Travis Kelce kind of barking back at Jamar Chase. And this thing is just, it's not stopping. I mean, you can go back. I mean, the mayor thing, the Burrowhead thing. I mean, you can even go back to 21 when the Bengals shocked them. This thing is just not stopping. I guess the question I would ask at this point is this now either at or superseding AFC North type rivalries? Because I asked this, I know there's a lot of history there, but I mean, these teams are now facing off once a year, at least, if not more, high profile games, and then all of this chatter that's going along with it. Are we seeing, you know, an AFC North like rivalry, or can we just say, hey, this is Patriots Colts from 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's closer to the latter because this transcends just the division. It's a heavyweight battle at this point. It's been a heavyweight battle all 4 times that they've met in the past. What has it been? 18 months. And in boxing, in that industry, a lot of the economy is the lead up to the fight. It's the ceremonious weigh-in where they just kind of stare into each other's
stare down,
have the fake punch, just kind of like rile up the attention. The difference between Joe Burrow and Travis Kelce is that one of them has a podcast, so one of them has a more vetted interest to create some content with the things that he says, which is, of course, referring to Travis Kelce. I love Travis Kelce, but he's got a big mouth, and he knows how to use it, and he knows how to use it to fire up the people who support him and to enrage the people that maybe don't. So, again, like we talked about this last week, the correct thing to do is that if you are a quarterback peer of Patrick Mahomes, then it's in your best interest to say that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL because, 1, it's probably true, and 2, it's the most productive thing to say. But if you are a receiver of Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or anyone who can possibly contend with Patrick Mahomes, then it's in your best interest to stand by your quarterback and say that he's the best. So, of course, Travis Kelce's not going to respond to what Joe Burrow said because that wouldn't be good content. He's going to respond to what Jamar Chase said, and this is just the epitome of talking about football in June.
So the other thing, I mean, I know this is kind of pointing out the obvious, but Orlando Brown Jr. coming to the Bengals, just adds another element. And you have to kind of think not only is it, okay, hey, the Bengals are paying me, good money. They're giving me the position that I want and all of that, but there might have been a little bit of spite. I wish we kind of asked him this a little bit. We shied away from contract stuff when he was on the show a couple months back, but I wonder if there was a little bit of spite to say, hey, Kansas City, you're not paying me what I'm worth and or the position that I want to play. So now I'm going to go to your biggest rival, and and even as a possibility. I don't know. It's just all of it is adding fuel to the fire. All of it is it just keeps growing. And this is the quiet time of the NFL. I mean, for the most part, a quieter time of the NFL calendar. And the shots just keep getting fired back and forth. Granted, it's little, blah, 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 blah. It's nothing like, crazy disrespectful or anything like that. But these two teams, particularly it seems Kansas City more so than the Cincinnati side, these two teams and their players are paying attention very closely to what is said, what is heard, everything. It just seems like they have a laser focus on all things coming out of Bengals players' mouths, coaches' mouths, etc.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to dedicate this much attention during the season when they actually have other teams to worry about and whatnot. So now, nothing.
We've seen it the other way though, right? I mean,
true.
With Reed and everything. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that was also like leading up to the game, I think, like during that week. But yeah, like I understand, like it's the dead period and it's the time when people talk, and of course, Bengals and Chiefs is always a hot topic because of how interesting the matchup and the budding rivalry has become. So yeah, like. As far as what the definition of rivalry is to me, like it should be between two teams who are very equally matched and are very similar in terms of their accomplishments and everything like that. So considering where the Bengals are right now, like their biggest rival is the Chiefs, and the same is vice versa. Even though the Chiefs obviously have accomplished more, but to go with maybe the animosity route, I do think that there's still some residual resentment, if you will, about the Bengals beating the Chiefs in the AFC Championship on their home field, because if the Chiefs win that game, they're probably favorites to beat the Rams in that Super Bowl, and they're like an official, like they're like a locked in dynasty that
Dynasty.
is on par with what the Patriots were in the early 2000s. Now there's like, yeah, like Mahomes has won two and he's like a lock to go to the Hall of Fame, but there's still some like, okay, like they haven't done it every single time like a true dynasty would, even though that's so much harder now than it was even 20 years ago. So yeah, it started in those two games when the Bengals won, and the fact that they've kept it close and they've just come back to them at the end of the season. Like, this isn't going away anytime soon, and this hate, whether it be fabricated in the offseason for clicks or not, it's not dissipating anytime soon.
I'm old enough to remember in the late 80s, early 90s, even mid 90s, the Marty Schottenheimer Chiefs and the animosity that was held to the John Elway Broncos. I mean, all, the Raiders. I mean, all these teams were, and it just never. And granted, maybe it's just revisionist history or whatever that I'm playing here, but I mean, I just this is like division rival, heated. It's just at a level where I'm like, I still am a little shocked. I think that I'm shocked that these two teams that seemingly didn't have a lot of crossover before the last couple of years. I mean, I'm shocked at how quickly this escalated, I guess, is what I'm trying to articulate.
Yeah, that's true. And I think because most of the games have been such high profile, obviously half of them have been for a trip to the Super Bowl. So there's
Yeah.
obviously a lot of emotions riding on that. My concern, Anthony, is that it escalates beyond what it is now, because I remember it was like 2017. It was the game against the Steelers where Ryan Shazier injured himself and
Yeah.
essentially retired, right? Like, that was at that point I realized that the Bengals Steelers rivalry was more about just injuring the other player more than just being better, because there was just so much visceral hate. And to me, that doesn't make a good rivalry. That just makes for unwatchable football almost, to that extent. If the Bengals Chiefs stays at the point where both teams are really good, and yes, of course there is dislike that kind of fuels them, but it's not I'll go all out and get revenge for Greg Cook, like Robert Oprek is saying in the comment section. Like, I want no part of that. I want Patrick Mahomes to be healthy. I want the Chiefs to have full health. I want the Bengals to have full health, because that makes the best product, that makes the best watchable games to go over to analyze and then to watch in real time, and then to have success without all that stuff. It makes it that much better. I just hope it doesn't get to the point of like the late 2010s Bengals Steelers, because that was just ugly to watch all around.
That's a good point. And yeah, I mean that transcended, verbal jabs back and forth and all. I mean that got ugly, and that got ugly fast. And obviously, there's been a lot of changes, particularly on the Bengals side of things, roster wise, coaching wise, since all of that took place. But unfortunately, I mean, we've seen the Steelers and how they play physical football. That's just kind of ingrained in their DNA in terms of the extracurriculars, the extra aggressiveness, that sort of thing. Even in some of the down years, which haven't really even been down years by most team standards, they still have that edge that they play with that. And I agree with you, though. I really would not like to see that this come to that. I think there's going to be some jawing on the field as I mean, we've seen Chase get a little extra animated when he's made plays and other things happen in the more recent games. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I think we'll see a little bit of that, but I don't think we're going to see cheap shots, bad anything like that. I don't think that's going to be part of the situation there. But again, this just keeps kind of evolving and keeps going on, and I don't know if it's going to continue on in training camp and into the regular season. Maybe, like you said, as the dog days of summer where you're grinding in practice, you're doing preseason, and of course you get into the regular season and that game is far down the schedule. Maybe you kind of focus on tasks at hand and not so much what's coming down the road. But I'm very interested to see how this continues to go on, because it just seems like any type of question that is asked, particularly of the Bengals and their response, it just seems like, the other side is just really just jumping all over it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it comes down to like it's up to the media to either continue asking those questions or stop asking those questions. If they weren't asked in the first place, I don't think either side would just kind of bring it up out of nowhere. But I do get the sense that like the Chiefs may be taking it a little bit more personal compared to the other side, at least from my perspective. But they're the winners and they get to act how they want. So that's just how it is until it changes.
It is, but again, this rivalry just keeps gaining momentum, keeps gaining steam, and maybe that's just all what the NFL wants with these two teams because we know that this game is crazy entertaining when these two teams play. We know it's always high stakes, even in the regular season, and it's going to be that way again this year. They're going to meet at least once, and we'll see what happens there. Probably another very high-profile game, all things considered. So, Bengals Chiefs continues to be a headline, even when in a time where there aren't many headlines. All right, so when we do the potential breakout players, what we've done normally is sometimes we grab from obscurity or we kind of grab it and make arguments for players that may or may not have a good chance of it. We try and make a compelling argument there, but other times we kind of go for low hanging fruit and it's usually by grabbing some of the summer headlines, the spring headlines for players. Oftentimes it has to do with, they've gained good weight or they look much better this year in non-padded practices and all that kind of stuff. Well, you know what, John? I'm going to go low-hanging fruit again because there is a interior defensive lineman. They didn't, they had opportunities to grab some in the draft. They didn't. And so they've put a lot of stock in this kid in year two, it would seem. He played a little edge last year. He was like at 290. They were kind of tinkering around with different roles with him. He played inside, he played outside. In college, he did the same thing. I think in his final year of Florida, he had 9.5 sacks. So I mean, he's got abilities to do a lot of different things. He's a versatile player, but here we go right now. This is from the Athletics, Paul Dehner Jr., and we've got this story on Cincy Jungle. But Paul Dehner Jr. of the Athletics said that he is now topping 300 pounds after playing in the 290s last year, put on about 20 to get to 310. And dedication and tenacity, now understanding his role playing inside at three technique, backing up BJ Hill. Bengals, again, did not really go that route in terms of outside guys. So they are showing a lot of trust in the Zach Carter. I don't know if you want to call it project, development, whatever you want to call it. So while this is kind of one of those headlines from the summer where you go, okay, of course, he's putting on the good muscle weight, all that kind of stuff. I think it does show that he and the team are maybe on the same page about his role going forward. What is expected of him, that the fact that, they showed some trust in him and now he's a taller guy. And so getting to 310 maybe, gives him a little bit, you've had three techniques oftentimes are maybe a little smaller and kind of have that Geno Atkins size, lower center of gravity, that sort of thing. He is. So, I mean, maybe all of this plays into a potential breakout year for Zach Carter, even as a rotational guy, even as a backup guy. I still think he's valued and the coaches have high hopes for him this year.
It was a lot for him, and it's a lot for rookie defensive linemen in general when they come into the league because those guys end up playing multiple techniques. And like he said, he wasn't really sure what the plan was going to be. He was transitioning from an edge to more of an interior guy, but he was playing 5 technique. He was playing 3 technique. He was playing wherever the Bengals needed him to play. And part of that was because they lacked some depth there in the middle of the season. DJ Reader went down. They had to rely on J2 Fele. They had to rely more on Zach Carter. And like you said, with BJ Hill playing a lot of snaps, he was being trusted to play a lot behind him as well. I don't know if his role is going to be more defined this year, but the fact that they didn't add another 3 technique behind BJ Hill, it would seem like that's just going to be where he's going to be counted on the most. For me, though, it wasn't necessarily an issue of weight or size with him. I think 290 would have been fine to kind of survive in the roles that he did. If he's 310, with the same level of explosion and speed that he had, because he already wasn't too great in either of those categories. Like, that's fine. It was really just like he didn't really utilize any pass rushing plans last year, and he just got zero pressure. I think he was graded like below 40 several times as a pass rusher from Pro Football Focus, and that was really reflective of what the tape showed. Like, I think he had like a cleanup sack against the Patriots kind of late in the season,
He
but
kind of set the edge on in run plays more often, it would seem, right?
right. And early in like the biggest improvement I saw from him as the season went on is that he just ended up finding the ball more and ended up making more plays on the ball carry, which is good. Like, you want to see an increased level of comfort for those guys when you're playing inside there. So we'll see. Like, I'm mainly interested in his hand usage and his overall play as a pass rusher, because like it just needs to be better if he's to be as productive as like a guy like Larry Ogunjobi was, right? And he'll probably never be that level of explosive athlete, especially not at 310 pounds. Or maybe he's just primarily a run defender, and that's just going to be his role. And if that is who he is as a late third round pick, then that is what it is. But the Bengals still need some answer inside to give them some type of an explosive boost to go along with BJ Hill. If it's Zach Carter, that's great. If it's not, they'll just have to keep looking. But like that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for, because that's where he struggled the absolute most last year.
Here's the other element to it, where I don't know if there was a heart to heart that happened either on exit interviews or maybe post draft or what have you. But I mean, that defensive end room got crowded this offseason with Basham, with Miles Murphy. I mean, you still got Cam Sample in the mix. You now have Hendricks and Hubbard in the names. Osai probably getting a higher profile role next year as well. So, if there was this vision of him becoming an edge player for the Bengals, that's an uphill battle for him to climb. Whereas if they think that he can at least has versatility to kick inside at the pro level, they may say, hey, bulk up, muscle up, and really study this position, because it's going to be hard for you to potentially make this team as an edge player based on the Murphy addition, Basham, etc. Now, granted, I think they like him as a football player. Otherwise, they wouldn't have drafted him in the third round last year. But I mean, that may be part of this entire formula. Is like, hey, that edge room is getting kind of crowded, and we need somebody right here to back up BJ Hill. And we don't have someone truly grabbing onto that role. You got Tupou that kicks inside there, like you mentioned Tufele as well. But they need someone that can get with the snaps they are given, pretty consistent quarterback pressures and penetration into the backfield.
Yeah, I think he was always at most an emergency option at edge. Like, he had experience at Florida, but that was when he was down at like 280, and that's like the old school Bengals edge, like the Michael Johnsons and the Dunlaps that were. But he wasn't really built like those guys. He didn't really have the flexibility and the bend. I mean, even MJ wasn't exactly like that, but you kind of get my point. Like, Carter was always going to be transitioning to the inside, but it's not easy in Lou Anarumo's defense. You're playing a lot of techniques. You're playing a lot of two gapping. Sometimes you're one gapping. It's a lot of different stuff going on. And obviously, when you're a rookie and it's the busiest, most whirlwind year of your career, everyone always says the transition into year two is where you see that jump, because things start to slow down and your role becomes more defined. And that's the good thing with Carter, is that there is no one else really to compete with him for what his projected role is. So everything should be more clear and concise for him to kind of digest, and we'll see if this weight kind of helps. Maybe it'll transform him into a better run defender. Excuse me, but yeah, I'm really interested to see how they utilize him as a pass rusher. If they take him off the field more often on third downs, if they slide in a Miles Murphy or Sam Hubbard inside, because they have that added edge depth. Like, it was definitely clear that they needed some burst off the edge, because you can't survive 29th in sacks again, even if sacks aren't like the most defined metric for pass rushing. Like, it needed to improve. They needed to finish more often, and I don't know if they can rely on Zach Carter to do that. But if they're just saying, hey, plug this B gap, for like 20 snaps a game, I think he can do that.
What are your expectations for him this year? I mean, what do you anticipate him making that nice leap? Do you anticipate maybe some more bumps along the way? Him getting lost in the shuffle? I mean, what are your realistic expectations? And I guess a follow up for you would be okay. Well, your expectations, but also what would a nice year look like? Would it be that 20 snap scenario that you think he can do? Would that be a nice year and just kind of a big remedy for what the Bengals need?
Yeah, like he played 461 snaps last year, including the playoffs. So what is that? That was
That's
19
actually more
games.
than I didn't research it, but that's actually more than I kind of thought he played.
Yeah, so that's around I think 24 or 25 a game. So that I think
Yeah.
that's a fair expectation this year as well because again, like the depth at defensive tackle, specifically through technique and five technique, it's just not there. It's mainly just him. So provided he stays healthy, I think 461 is probably the floor this year. So
Mm.
more snaps, more opportunity, could be more production, but it all depends on how he kind of grows in that area. Like I will admit though, like towards the end of the season, like he graded 80.2 against the Patriots, 76.3 against the Ravens in that regular season finale. He had two of his playoff games were graded above 60 against the Ravens and Chiefs. So he kind of ended kind of on a high note, but that was, I think it was more because of how improved he was as a run defender. So maybe it was at the end of the season. Okay, they were saying, okay, this guy looks the part now of a guy that we can rely on these early downs to give BJ Hill a break. Maybe that's the biggest impact that Carter can make. If Carter can provide BJ Hill enough rest so he's not playing as many snaps as he did last year, so you can maximize him as a pass rusher because he's by far your best three technique guy that can push the pocket. Maybe that's the sign or the indicator of a successful season for Carter. I'm not really measuring him by production because I just don't know what he's capable of in terms of getting pass rushing production. But if he can make BJ Hill a better player, a la Miles Murphy, creating more opportunities in a
Yep.
fresher Trey Hendrickson, maybe that is how he measures Zach Curtis' impact.
That's a fantastic point, and that's kind of where I was going next in terms of the edge defenders. Because I mean, when you look at you, to me, Trey Hendrickson late last year and at the end of 21, he looked gassed, man. He
Yeah,
looked absolutely gassed, and I know he's a guy that just yeah. I mean, there's effort players and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you just see the effort in which Trey Hendrickson plays. I mean, you see it. Um, so he gives it all on every snap. But as you're getting 3 and 4 postseason games deep, and I mean, he had the wrist issue. I think this year that would he break it, fracture his wrist or something, and he's playing a ton of snaps just because out of necessity, and he is effective. But that is a great point where it's not so much okay. Maybe Zach Carter's biggest benefit or biggest added benefit to the team is not so much what he shows in the stat column, but what BJ Hill is able to show in the stat column because Carter comes in and yeah, he provides effective snaps in that rotation, but he also, because he's doing that, he's keeping BJ Hill fresher, like Osai, like Miles Murphy, like Basham, and these other guys that are going to be vying for edge spots to get those spot snaps and really give some relief to Hubbard and Hendrickson.
yeah, and the good thing is, like I think Carter was a better player at Florida than I originally gave him credit for because I didn't know a ton about him coming out of college, but the production was solid, and I think the tape was solid enough to like. I mean, guys drafted in the third round, they usually like have good tape in general. So Carter was a pretty clean prospect with not a ton that kind of stood out, but like he was a good player at Florida, and I think having a more defined role and things kind of slowing down for him and being maybe a more comfortable size playing inside all the time, maybe that's when you'll see things kind of click together. But as far as like production expectations, I don't really know because some years like you'll have Trey Hendrickson having 14 sacks and then he had like 7 sacks this year. Like it kind of comes and goes, but I think he definitely belongs in this defense. It's one of the best defenses in the NFL, and that's got to feel pretty good for him.
My biggest concern, and I want to hear yours as well. My biggest concern, though, is too much of a tweener, too much of an in betweener in terms of position, in terms of body type, in terms of size, all of that. And I look back at guys like, remember Marcus Hardison
Mm-hmm.
that the Bengals drafted in the middle rounds under Marvin Lewis. Remember Will Clark, a guy, and it's like, well, is he, he's kind of an edge, but then we put him inside a little bit too. And sometimes you see it work with a guy like Wallace Gilberry and Frosty Rucker and all, some of these other guys with the Bengals where they've been able to utilize those guys nicely and get effective snaps from multiple places on the line. but there's a ton of other examples where you go, we just can't find it. It's round pegs, square hole, whatever the analogy is there. It's just not clicking. And so that's my concern, is that if he is an in-betweener in terms of size or, build, that sort of thing, where he may be too big to be an NFL edge, but he either doesn't have the skill set or maybe a little small or just not the right fit inside as well. So I think, in calling him a potential Bengals breakout player this year, it's a bit of a roll of the dice, but I think, it's kind of one of those swing for the fence type of deals.
Yeah, like, I mean, those names, Will Clark and Marcus Hardison, the issue with those guys.
Send chills, don't you?
Yeah,
doesn't
like
it?
they couldn't do, unfortunately, they couldn't do like a single thing at like a decent level. They were just very below average at a lot of things, which is why I think they tried to trot him out there for a lot of different things. I think
it's similar round where they were drafted, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Hardison I think was a mid fourth, and Clark was a late third. You go to Rennell Wren. I mean, that was a four. I mean, they look for these types of guys in the middle rounds.
I think Carter can be a decent run defending defensive tackle. And again, if that's all he is, then you just take it and just move on. But the biggest thing that he could do outside of expectation would be to become like an average pass rusher, because an average pass rusher is more than anything they have inside other than BJ Hill.
Well, we'll see what happens with him. I think he's a guy that again, I think maybe there was a conversation there between the Bengals brain trust and Zach Carter, either after the season ended last year or the beginning of this one, or after the draft, this one, where they said, this is kind of the role and this is how you need to prepare for it. And if that is the case, he has answered the call, and it sounds like he's doing what he needs to do to get ready for that position inside, which is good. But, gaining the muscle, gaining the weight, and doing things the right way is one step in the process. You got to actually apply it and do the work, and hopefully it all comes together for them. But the Bengals did show, some faith in him by not, overly pursuing some of these guys either in the draft or free agency, and they're kind of rolling with it. So we'll see what happens. We're going to start closing up here. We've been doing a little bit more abbreviated shows during this period of time, but I wanted to close up before we drop the mic and get out. I wanted to close up. We used to do a thing. We talked about it before we took the air, John. We used to do a thing where it was remember when, and it was kind of calling back to either some Bengals greats. Remember this player. Remember this play. Remember this time. Remember this game. All that sort of thing. And so I kind of thought, well, with practices kind of starting to subside and training camp coming a little bit down the road, I thought we'd kind of revisit that, whether you want to call it a Bengals blast from the past, or if you want to still say remember him or remember when, that sort of thing, we can do that. But as you know, when a team has a good tight end on their roster and a good player at that position, I'm a big fan of it. We broke down a few of those in that position group in our 2023 prospect profiles, and the Bengals have had some pretty damn good ones in their history. Even I know he doesn't sit all that well with a lot of Bengals fans at this point in time, but you look statistically, he's one of the best in by position is Jermaine Gresham. He was a guy that was productive for the most part. You can go, Tony McGee and Reggie Kelly was a very valued member of that, and of course the great Bob Trumpy. By the way, I understand he had an interview with I believe it was Tom Brenneman or something recently that was supposed to be an hour long, and it was very insightful. So I guess go check that out. My friend Dale Altman just told me that earlier today. But regardless, the Bengals had a tight end before some of those names, Tony McGee and all of those, that kind of revolutionized the position for them and in the NFL a bit. He was a guy who made multiple Pro Bowls. He was a guy who did a lot in the offense. Yes, he was an ancillary weapon, but he was a guy that would flank, the tackles, make a lot of plays on the field, and just did a lot of things that tight ends now do that didn't do back in the 1980s, and was known as a good blocker, good catch, good receiver, and that's Rodney Holman. And you may or may not remember him all that much, John, but he was a guy that was one of my personal faves from the 1980s team. If anyone has a contact with him, let him know. We'd love to have him on the show. But here's some of the plays here that you can see. I mean, he's just, just a couple of quick little plays. Here he is just streaking down the sideline on a big play. This is my favorite one here, where he just charges over a ton of guys here and just carries guys. So he's a guy that had to give him a shout out.
Yeah, I think Rodney Holman has 4 of the top 15 receiving seasons for tight ends in Bengals history. I was looking at some of those stats recently, just for like Aerosmith research, and like there's never been a 1,000-yard receiver at tight end, but Rodney Holman I think broke 500 I think 4 times, and you're talking about late 80s, early 90s. So you had Boomer at quarterback, and one of those was the Super Bowl season. So like production doesn't always stand the test of time when you're talking about like eras, but like the most productive tight end seasons the Bengals have had in their history have all been from that era. And as you could see from those clips, like Holman was an athlete for sure for being, a tight end of that size, but like he could stretch the field. I've obviously never seen him play, but I have seen highlights and I have heard like how good he was. Like 9 touchdowns in that 1989 season, 736 yards, is 6th in terms of the all-time record for the position at receiving yards. Like, yeah, obviously Dan Ross and Bob Trumpy, who are also on this list as well. And there's Jermaine Gresham. I think Jermaine Gresham's best season was 737, so just one more than Rodney Holman. But yeah, it's exciting when you have a tight end that can kind of stretch the field, and I think that's what the Bengals are currently hoping for with Irv Smith.
Again, he's to me, he was a blend of, and hopefully the mic issues. Some people are saying my mic was, or somebody's mic, I don't know. I think it was probably mine that was going a little wonky. Hopefully it's been fixed. But at any rate, to me, he was a blend of kind of an old throwback tight end, and also a kind of one that was revolutionizing things because of the offense that Sam Weish, Boomer Esiason, and company were running. And, he was just a very effective weapon. And then what also made him extremely effective was how great Boomer Esiason was at selling a play action. If you go back and watch some Boomer clips of him and his play action fake, I mean, he had camera guys, juked out at times. And, that coming off of that and hitting him, in the seam or, coming across the middle, that was just a lethal play in the Bengals arsenal. And just a guy who is a very valued member, doesn't get talked about a ton in Bengals circles, but, a guy I think I can't remember his place, but I know he was in the top 50 players of all time in their history. Really good player, and just wanted to give him a little bit of a nod because I was thinking about him. I think it was Bengal Jim who maybe put out a Twitter poll and said, like, hey, when you think of 82, number 82, which Bengal comes to mind? And that was like the one. I'm like, oh, him. But Tony McGee was on there, Marvin Jones was on there, and I saw Holman kind of not winning that race, and I felt a little upset.
Well, I think he appreciates it. I don't know if he'll ever be in the Ring of Honor, but I think he appreciates the shout out. So good on you.
Yeah. Well, let's drop the mic. I guess I should literally drop my mic, given the issues that I've had with it today. I think I figured out what the problem was, but that's neither here nor there. Nothing like figuring it out right at the end there. But John, let's drop the mic. What do you got for us?
How the hell how can I top that amazing pun? No, like I got nothing.
You got nothing? Okay.
I got nothing.
Just a quick shout out. I'm gonna try and pin the link to folks in the live chat for you. I was joined. There's a new Bengals podcast out, a great one run by a great guy, Dusty, and Dusty also is a military veteran, currently works with the National Guard. So thank him for his service. Thanks to him for his service to the country. But if you are watching on the live streams Cincy Jungle, Facebook, or our OBI YouTube channel. That is the YouTube channel, Bengals Army. It's a new show. He had myself and Dale Altman on an episode that'll be dropping in the next couple of days. He had Zim Hude on. He's had a couple of other great people on. And, he's a great guy, fun show. And, I appreciate him inviting me on. And, John, I'm sure you'll be getting an invite. I may or may not have already voluntold you to go. But no, great guy, great show. Go give him some views and support his show because he's a great guy and doing great work over there. So that's kind of my mic drop for this week.
Sounds awesome, man. Can't wait.
Yeah, he's got a cool logo too. The Bengals Army logo is a cool logo. That's going to do it for us. We went a little short, and maybe better to go short based on the chirping of the audio equipment that we've had tonight. Haven't had that happen to us in quite some time, but this is what happens when we usually do, twice a week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week in the season. When you go once a week, you get a little rusty, but that's okay. That's okay. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with some of the audio issues. John, thank you for, as always, coming on and dealing with my last minute, hey, are you ready to go on the air type of request? But hey, thank you. And thanks everybody. We will see you very soon. And we'll talk some more Bengals football. Training camp is around the corner. We've got a lot to talk about. John, have a good week, bud.
You as well.